Samurai Jack, despite its seeming simplicity, presents very real themes. Today let's take a look at Season 5. This season has both Jack and Ashi going down seemingly simple redemption arcs, but yet both have far more meaning behind them than you'd think at first glance. Just a disclaimer before we get any further. Normally I like to use clips in my video essays, but when I tried doing so for Samurai Jack, the video was blocked and my copyright dispute was thrown out. So unfortunately this video includes stills, not clips from the show. Anyways, let's get back to it. Ashi was raised as one of the daughters of Aku, her sole purpose in life being to kill Samurai Jack. After she fails and is forced to work with him, she begins to see the insanity of her worldview and the truth behind his. After Jack thought some children had died, he finally gave in to his desire to commit suicide, something Ashi, given her newfound respect for Jack, wishes to stop. She sets off to save him, asking many different people where he went. The Woolies recall how Jack freed them from their slavers. The blind archers tell Ashi that when given the option to return to the past or save them, Jack chose the latter, and in an act of true selflessness, destroyed his way home to free them. The same goes for the DJ at the dance party, who tells the story of how Samurai Jack saved her and her parting friends from Aku's influence. Each of these groups was previously oppressed, not only by Aku, but in the case of the Woolies by another evil. Each recalls Samurai Jack's selflessness and heroism. Each group, previously unable to defend themselves, is now actively against Aku. We see the Woolies, far from home, who upon hearing that someone is searching for Jack, immediately move in to defend him. The archers at first are shown fighting Aku's robots, and take Ashi to their beautiful home where they have erected a statue in honor of Samurai Jack. Even the partiers have their own symbol and song in honor of him. Through these encounters, Ashi comes to see that she is not alone in finding hope in Samurai Jack. All these different species and beings, all in different circumstances, have been touched by Samurai Jack over the years, and even 50 years later still firmly stand by him in his fight. This is exactly how Ashi has come to feel, and finally, in an act embracing this new worldview, she washes off the ashes that has covered her thus far, finally letting go of her past self and embracing this newer, brighter future. No longer does she wear black, a color symbolic of evil, literally the color of Aku, but now she wears green. According to borncreative.com, green is the color of life and renewal. It symbolizes growth and harmony. This is the perfect color to represent Ashi in this moment. By embracing goodness over evil, she has finally taken her biggest step in her character growth. She's no longer conflicted about what's true and what's false. She's finally in harmony. And how fitting is it that her clothing is literally made of nature, something natural to this world, the stark opposite of Aku. Then, obviously, she tells Jack of her change of heart and that the kids he thought died actually lived and he doesn't kill himself. I know it seems like I'm glossing over an important character moment, but honestly, that scene is straightforward enough I didn't think it necessary to elaborate on. The real subject of this video, for both Ashi and Jack's characters, is the following episode, 98. So it's here that for the first time, Ashi fights against evil. Sure, she fought against the samurai spirit in the previous episode, but the way I see it, that was more of a battle between her way of thinking and Jack's, in that moment anyways. So it's here that she has her first real fight against evil, that being an entire army. It seems that the odds are so insanely stacked against her. The army even laughs at the notion for her standing up to them, but naturally as a former daughter of Aku, she makes quick work of them. It's after this, though, that she faces her true enemy, her mother, leader of the Daughters of Aku. This fight is truly one of conflicting viewpoints rather than conflicting characters, pitting Mother covered in black ash, face behind a mask, an agent of evil, against Ashi, the woman who has forsaken every aspect of Mother's character. The two fight, Mother trying to kill Jack and Ashi trying to defend him. Mother is fighting with the intent to inflict harm, not just on Jack but upon the whole world in the service of darkness. She is so dedicated to Aku that she even gives Ashi a chance to rejoin him, but Ashi immediately declines without so much as a second thought. Ashi here, unlike Mother, unlike the lifestyle she's left behind, is not fighting to kill. She's not fighting to inflict pain on others. Rather, it is here that she's fighting in defense of Jack, in defense of hope, of goodness, and naturally she wins. This is why I think her redemption arc ends here, and not in the previous episode. Sure, in the last episode she let go of her past, but it's here that she stands up to the darkness that controlled her life for so long. It's here that she finally takes a stand against evil, against Aku, and it's so fitting that this is in defense of Jack, the man she was raised to kill. So, like I said before, the seppuku scene is pretty straightforward, and therefore I'm not going to discuss it. On top of this, though, this had nothing to do with Jack's redemption. Sure, he overcame a negative part of his thoughts, but that's not really redemption. He didn't make up for some sin, for some flaw. He simply contemplated suicide for an understandable reason and then stopped himself. Jack's redemption, like Ashi's, comes in 98. This entire season we have seen a broken, somewhat depressed Jack. I mean, he literally went off to kill himself. But this raised the question, how did he go from being Samurai Jack to this broken version of himself? This episode answers this question with a flashback to a time well before this season began. It shows Jack in his classic attire, and more importantly, with his sword, ascending a large mountain. He meets these adorable little goats that guide him to a time portal. He rushes over to it and jumps in, finally achieving his goal of returning home, when Aku reaches in and pulls him back out, then destroys the portal, the last portal in existence, right in front of Jack. Enraged by this, Jack charges Aku, attacking him in a fit of pure rage until Aku summons some monsters and flees. Jack, still mad, doesn't hesitate to kill these creatures, and afterwards, after stabbing the third one in the brain, notices it shrink down back to regular size. These monsters were just the cute little goats under the influence of Aku's magic. But now, all three were dead by Jack's hand. And if matters couldn't get any worse, his sword falls into the hole of what used to be the portal, and all seemed lost. In this episode, though, he returns to the scene to reclaim it, but discovers it is no longer there. He realizes that he didn't lose it, but rather lost the right to use it. Why? Because like I said, he acted with anger, with hatred. He used the sword out of hatred for Aku, rather than in defense of good, and thus sinned against the gods that made the sword, and was no longer worthy to wield it. He sits down and begins to meditate. He awakens in a field of green grass, green, like I said, being a color of growth. He wanders around, paddles down a river, and arrives at a building. It and the surroundings all blue. Even the man standing there falls victim to this blue hue. Now, according to sensationalcolor.com, blue is often used to represent wisdom, understanding, the human psyche. It symbolizes an introspective journey into oneself, something Jack is certainly doing here. The man in the house has Jack make tea, which he does as the episode humorously switches between the intense Ashi fight and Jack's simple, silent process of making tea. The man takes a sip and says it is terrible. It has all the necessary ingredients, he says, but lacks balance. Jack becomes angry, then realizes this is why there is no balance. Once again, his anger is getting the better of him, just as it did that fateful day when Aku destroyed the portal. He calls himself out for his shortcoming and finally lets go of his anger, redeeming himself. Finally, he reclaims his sword and dons his classic samurai robe, with the resolve to complete the mission that just a short while ago he was so quick to abandon. Like his tea, all the ingredients are now there. And unlike his tea, he is balanced. One more thing I'd like to note that I thought was kind of cool was that Jack's sin involved killing of those goats in anger because, they were monsters and he didn't realize they were the goats. But what was cool is that when Ashi was fighting Mother, she took a horn from one of the skulls of the goats and used it as a weapon to defend herself and, by extension, Jack. She takes this piece of Jack's shortcoming, of Jack's sin, and uses it in defense of good. If that skull had not been there, perhaps she would have lost because she would have had no way of defending herself. So yeah, I just thought that was interesting. So yeah, that's going to be it for this video. If you enjoyed it, please be sure to like and subscribe. Have a good day, and I'll see you next time.